Hello, this is Evan Rogerson, Nine Motor Gang here. As I'm sure some of you, this will be the first video of mine that you ever see. I've been doing robotics for a lot of years now, and I like to make educational, helpful YouTube videos specifically designed for newer teams to just help them get them up to speed and understand things that's going on. So I'm going to be breaking down primarily the reveal video for Pushback, and I'm also going to be going ahead and talking about some of the other things that were revealed at Worlds, such as the location for VEX Worlds, some of the signature events, and I'll also be covering some of the supplementary materials that's not in the reveal video, but that does give us a little bit of hints about how the game's going to be played. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe in order to please the YouTube algorithm, and let's go ahead and get into it. So first up, I'm going to be going through and breaking down the actual game reveal video. I can't play that for you because the audio will be copyrighted. So the first thing here is we have our standard setup of it is a 12-foot by 12-foot field, and it has two teams, red and blue. And this is kind of our main field. So let's go ahead and break down each of these things. We have scoring zones. We have two large scoring zones at the edges and two small scoring zones in the middle. One of them is at the bottom, and since these are clear, it's kind of hard to see. We have 4 max load stations and then 4 hanging stations. I'm going to call them hanging stations because they're just the end game task. And it also looks like in the middle of the field, something a lot of teams talked about is it looks like these are potentially tape lines on the field, and that is a lot of tape if they were to do that, and also in very intricate patterns. I don't think it is, because you also have this VEX Robotics logo is actually a part of the field, based on all of the materials that I've seen. Also looks to be a slightly darker shade, so I believe this is a plastic sheet that is in the middle of the field that teams will have to drive over, which could definitely add some extra challenge about how the game is going to be played and how robots are going to have to navigate over this, just because that's going to change your traction, and especially for autonomous, I could see this being a big pain, because if you have PID controls or something controlling your movements, those are going to have to be different on this middle sheet. Then, kind of moving on, we have red and blue alliances, and we have our main object, which are blocks, I believe they're officially called. These are octodecahedrons, and they are 18-sided shapes, and these kind of remind me of the buckyballs from the game Toss Up. So if you look over here, we have, this is Toss Up, and these are, again, these sort of like octagonal ball-shaped things. Not quite octagonal, these are more hexagonal. And then they have scoring zones that you can try and put these balls in. So it kind of reminds me of these. If you're looking for intakes on how to handle these, I would definitely recommend looking up Toss Up. They also kind of remind me of Gateway, but just kind of the way that the balls go in there, it made me think of Toss Up when I first saw this. Now, going back to here, they're fairly small, only 3¼ inches, which is one of the smallest game objects we've had. I believe the last time we had a game element this small was not the rings and tipping point. Those were 4.125 inches, I believe, which is similar to this. And then last time we had was the turning point balls, which were a little over 2 inches, if I remember correctly. So smaller game object, and we also have a lot of them. There are 88 of these on the field, 44 for each color. This is most than I think we've had in any game for a very, very long time. The most recent one that I can think of is Tipping Point, which had 72 rings and 7 mobile goals, but even then, that's still not quite as many as this. So this is a lot of game objects, and additionally, they also all can't be scored. And it looks like we have most of them start, or a good chunk of them started on the field in different positions. This is the red side of the field over here. And they have most of them starting on their side of the field. And the blue ones have most of the blue ones on their side of the field. But there's definitely still a little bit less than half, but a good number of blue ones to start on this side. Yeah, because it looks like these two cancel out, those cancel out. I assume there's another one right there and another one right there. So then it's 3 versus 4. So there's 2 more red ones on this side of the field. And then red also gets preloads, and blue gets preloads over here. So it looks like there's 2 preloads, 1 preload per robot, and then 6 max loads, which can be introduced into the towers through loaders, which is similar to Spin Up if you played that game, as that kind of had a loader that you had to place it on. But I believe that even still had a bit more of a human element in here. It looks like you're just basically going to have to drop the thing into the max load zone. And it looks like there's 6, and I'm going to guess that it's 6 per max load zone just because they're kind of separated, which is kind of like VEX U skills for over-under. But there could be that you just can share them, and they could go in any one of them. So that's kind of our field layout in terms of the buckyballs. Then we also have these goals. These are the long goals, and these fit 15 buckyballs in them each. And then we also have our short goals, and these fit 7 of them in each. So the short goals start in the middle. So really we have 4 scoring zones, but really there's 8 because there's an end to each of these. Like you have one end down there, one end down there, one end over here, one end over here. So really there's 8 different areas you can enter to score from. One other thing that I'm worried about is the structural integrity of these. I'm guessing this is thin metal, steel probably painted over orange. I'm not sure about the strength of these. It doesn't look super flimsy. I'm also not 100% sure how they're attached. It looks like they have some sort of plate mounting them to the bottom of the field. You can kind of see right there. However, I don't believe those use base plates, as I believe that's what the corner areas are for, which I'll kind of get into a little bit. You can kind of see right there. It only has like 3 screws holding it in, so 3 screws over there. And robots are going to be pushing on these a lot, I think, just because of how scoring works. Because the main way that you score is you kind of push these balls, grab the balls, you pick them up, and you put them in these scoring tubes, and the other team is also going to try and be pushing them out because they only fit 15 in the large ones and 7 in the smaller ones. And as you push these in, the balls on the other side are going to end up falling out. So I could definitely see you have 2 teams on opposite ends, both pushing in, trying to get the balls out, and these are going to be under a lot of force. Additionally, these are VRC robots. In VEX U, things get a lot nastier. You can easily get like 30-pound robots with 10 motor drives on them, and that's a lot of power, and these they don't look super solid. And it looks like these scoring zones are mostly made out of plastic. Like I could see robots just zooming by and they just ram into that at full speed. That doesn't even have any metal support or anything. Maybe that's a strategy to try and knock balls out. I'm not entirely sure, but not super confident that these are going to hold up throughout the season in terms of just structure. And then we have these control zones in the middle of the large tubes. And then you get a control bonus if you have the majority in here. And it looks like just because of these clips that they played, there's 4 in there. Then they kind of shifted down there. So it looks like, I'm guessing it's the middle 4 balls are what ends up determining that bonus. So it could be tied. And that is a 10-point bonus. However, really this is a 20-point bonus because it's a swing. Like if I'm red and I have the control bonus, and then you go and you push a bunch of my balls out, now you get the control bonus. So I lose 10 points, you get 10 points. It's a 20-point swing. So really this is double as valuable as it looks. And considering each of these balls are only worth 3 points, that makes this worth roughly 7 balls by just controlling the field. So I think this will definitely be more similar to Change-Up, in which position of the balls is more important than the balls themselves. Because in Change-Up, it was a 1-to-6 ratio of balls themselves were worth 1 point, and then the row control would be 6 using the top ball. And people mostly just played for the top ball. They didn't really care about what was in the middle, unless it was convenient, or during autonomous when they had the extra time to go through and carefully sort. But it doesn't look like anything starts scored in this match. And then in the smaller ones, we don't have the control bonuses. It's just who has a simple majority. And since these hold 7, they will most likely not end in a tie, assuming they're both full. And that is 8 points for the top one and 6 points for the bottom one. Which again, these are going to be swing points. So that's going to be worth 16 points swing. And that's going to be a 12-point swing down there. So these are definitely going to be very important. I do like that they have a lower scoring zone, as I think that'll be good for push bots and newer teams to still be able to play the game. And they also have the hang, or park, I guess, which is pretty easy to do. Also, it's 52 seconds. Always 52 seconds. You can see it's 52 seconds, and then it's still 52 seconds. Again, robot starts with a preload during the beginning of the autonomous period. Now, autonomous strategy-wise looks pretty simple. Each robot basically has 3 balls, 2 balls that they can go for. For scoring points, you can also grab the other team's balls to try and like hoard them, which I'll get to in a little bit. But autonomous looks pretty simple. Also, this will be a fun game to code autonomous for because the field is symmetric. Symmetric and it's not mirrored. So your left side autonomous will be the same on the left side every time, and your right side autonomous will be the same on the right side every time. It's not like this year where your left side on the left. On this year's game, so when you're on like the red alliance, the goal is on the right side and the extra rings are on the left side, whereas on your blue alliance, it's the opposite. So you can't just mirror the autonomous because the auton that goes for the rings on the right side will be going for the goal on the left-hand side. This is bad and it makes extra work for teams for no reason. You don't have to do this because on the left-hand side, you'll always have the low goal. That's the high goal on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, you will always have left-hand side is the high goal, right-hand side is the low goal on every time. And also the field loads are just pretty similar, so it should be pretty easy to code a left and right auton, especially if you just have like a lift or something. For the left side, you just raise it up, for the right side, you just lower it down. But all the balls are in the exact same position, which I think will also be good for field resetting, because it should be easier to memorize it because the balls, each quadrant is the exact same layout for all of them. And it also seems to be pretty symmetrical along multiple axes because like those 4 balls, those 4 balls, those 4 balls, those 4 balls. So it gets pretty easy there, I think, to set it up and memorize the field setup. Additionally, you also have these balls that start on the line. It looks like these ones, since they start over inside this mini neutral zone, both of these will be fair game. So I think that you could see strategies, also 52 seconds, where you like rush out and you try and maybe, especially at the higher levels of play, try and disrupt your opponent from getting that 1 extra ball to score those 3 points. It'd be a very high scoring game. And that's also the autonomous win point, which I'll get to in a bit, because we have 15 in the long tubes and 7 in the short tubes. So that's 44 balls total that can be scored, and each ball being worth 3 points. So that's like in the 130s. So that's like in the 130s in terms of balls scored. Then you also have the 2 10-point control bonuses, the 6, the 8-point bonus, and I assume Auton will be around 10 points. That's just kind of my guess. So that's also just going to lead to not a lot of the balls are going to be scored. There's only room for 44 balls to be scored, but there's 88 balls on the field. This is very different than any other game that we've had in a while. This year for Tipping Point, I believe all but 1 ring could be scored on the entire full field. For over-under, every single tri-ball could fit into the goal. For spin-up, every single disc could fit into the goal. For Tipping Point, every single ring could fit onto a goal pretty much. There might have been 1 or 2 that couldn't, spacing-wise. So this year, like, only half the objects can be scored, which I think will definitely be interesting playstyle-wise, which also ties into there is no possession limit. You can grab as many game objects as you want. However, this will affect your ability to expand, and you can also grab as many of the opponents as you want, which kind of leads into hoarding strategies. The last time this was really even close to a possibility, I think, was change-up, because you could have 3 balls of the other team's color at once. So, like, my robot had a hoarding mechanism that you could score another team's ball in it, and it just stayed there out of the way inside your robot the entire match. And it was 1 less ball they had. But in that case, there were only 18 balls total, far less than what could actually be scored. Whereas this year's game, there are 88 balls total, and there's only room for 44. So even if you grab 44 of their balls, half of their entire balls, they could still max out the score on the field. So you either, if you go with the hoarding strategy, you need to either grab a lot of their balls, like probably 60 or something of them, which seems ridiculous. But again, I'm not sure what the expansion rules will be, so maybe that's possible. And then, of course, once you grab them and they're out of play, there's no protected zones in this game. Balls can always be descored. So I think that'll definitely be interesting. Hoarding it not completely out of the question. Again, there might also be teams that just have a compartment that could store maybe like 10 balls of the other team's type, just built into their robot. And maybe you fill that up during autonomous. And then the other thing is there's match loading, which makes it really hard to hoard because you can grab every single ball that's out on the field, but then they still have 12 balls in reserve that they can go and put out later, near the end of the game, to specifically just try and get those control bonuses. So not a lot there. Then for autonomous, this is the autonomous win point. They say complete certain tasks, and these are the 4 things that they have pictured. So over here you can see this robot is grabbing all 3 of their balls out of a match load zone, 1 match load zone I should say. Then here you have the high zone and the low zone in the middle of the field, and they are scoring 2 balls into each of those, and that robot is scoring 3 balls into a neutral slide. So if I had to guess, it would probably be something like grab the 3 balls out of one of your match load zones, score 3 balls on one of the end pipes, and then score 2 balls in the high pipe and 2 balls in the low pipe. And that's just kind of a guess. Now, one of the things that I'm worried about for autonomous routine is the ability of your opponents to interfere with your autonomous. Given that there's 4 scoring zones, they're all shared, which is the first time in a very long time that we've had completely shared scoring zones. I think it's the only time during autonomous that we've had all shared scoring zones. Because even like change up with the goals are shared, you can't get to the other team's side of the field to score in their goals. All these start in the middle. There's no like blue exclusive zone over there and red exclusive zone over there. So this could be interesting for Auton because especially you want to get your balls into the middle, especially on these end pipes, to get the control bonus. So you don't just want to like set your ball down in the middle. But then there might be rules, well there almost certainly are rules about throwing all balls to the other side of the field. So you can't just like put your ball in and necessarily throw it down easily because it might slide out the end and hurt the other and make you lose auto because you crossed the line. However, if the other team puts a bunch of balls down at the end, or maybe they have them in the middle, then you might want to throw your ball down really fast in order to hit theirs and try and knock it out, which I don't know if this will be allowed, but I don't love that idea because then you could complete the autonomous win point, and then another team goes and de-scores your points during auto, and now you don't get the win point, which I feel like kind of goes against the purpose of win point, because that's kind of like, it's an independent thing. Even if you have really, really strong opponents, as long as you're a certain base level of skill, you can be rewarded. The other thing with that is this could lead to something kind of like turning point autonomous routines, where if you're both throwing your balls down on the field to try and knock the other teams out at the end of the match, in turning point you had flags that were toggled to either red or blue, and a lot of good teams would just, right at 15 seconds, they would launch their balls out, because yeah, I can shoot a flag and I can flip it to my color, but you can just shoot it right back. So they would do it right at the end of the match to try and make sure that it ended, because that's how things are scored. So I could definitely see there being something like that where teams are just at the thing and then they just throw the ball down. So maybe you don't want to set the balls down nicely. Maybe you want something like a puncher or a flywheel to just throw these down and try and knock the other team out. I don't know. I'm not even sure if any of these will be legal for autonomous. But even at the end of the match, that might be something good to try and push the other teams out. I think the last thing I want to talk about that's in the game reveal video is the parking at the end of the match. So you have parking zones, and basically you just have to get your robot inside. This should be pretty easy for push bots and middle school teams to be able to do, just as a nice way to score points. It's 8 points for a single park, and it is up to 30 points if you get a double park. Now, I don't think this is a lot of points, because even if this takes you the amount of time to just get in there is really fast. You're walking away from the middle. These are at the ends of the field, whereas the scoring zones are all in the middle of the field. So even if I go over there, that opens the end goals up for my opponents. And like I said, those are a 20-point swing just by pushing balls out. And it'll probably be even more, because if they push one of yours out the end and they put one of theirs in, that could potentially be you losing 3 points, them getting an extra 3 points for a total of 26-point swing, which is almost the 30 points from a double park. And so even if you single park, that lets the opponents get control of one of these ones, which could be a 20-point swing, so not worth it. And if you double park for 30 points, that leaves both of these tubes open, so both of your opponents could go in, and that could be a 40-point swing. So still a better return, but still not great. I do think it's important to have this ability just because it seems easy to do. It's probably also good to do for skills, especially at the high levels of play. And then it's also good as like a backup. Like if the opponents control both of these tubes and you can't push them out, like maybe there's some mechanism to block, you might as well go and hang just to try and get those extra points, kind of like the high stake this year and the ladder. It's not optimal, but if you're losing, it could be a good way to try and recover some points. So that's kind of my thoughts on the game. Also, I want to say whatever animator made this, you did a really good job. I really like this graphic, and it looks cool. It gives like nice factory assembly machine line vibes. So this is a video that I took right after the game came out. Bailey, who's one of the heads of the GDC from VEX, and then another person who I didn't recognize, I'm guessing he's lower down on the ladder, came out and kind of talked a little bit about the game. I can kind of play the audio over this, and I will pause it at specific points and kind of talk about some stuff, because there's some really interesting stuff here.
Game design committee to create a really fast-paced, offensively driven game that changes the scores dynamically throughout the match. That tug of war mechanic you see on our long goals is really interesting. We created a really fun mechanic of when you score one ball, it de-scores a ball from a full goal on the other side. But there is a different way to de-score, isn't there, Connor?
Right, so one thing we didn't show in the video is the center of these goals are enclosed. They don't allow for direct robot access. But that's not the case for these outer sections or for the center goals. So robots can come in here and remove balls in a different way.
So that's really interesting, because if you control the middle, you can still knock the other team's stuff out. Like I said, that scores 44 points, and you can fit 44 balls on, but I highly doubt you'll see that in most matches. So that's quite interesting. Again, my comments back to earlier about the structural integrity of these fields. You're going to have teams putting mechanisms down, chopping them down, and just sliding off, and I don't know how that's going to last. The plastic, assuming it's just plastic. Also, I did get the chance to hold one of these buckyballs, and they are the same material that they've used the last few years, the milk gallon material. So same texture as like rings and tri-walls. I'm guessing VEX is just moving towards that for manufacturing, and I'm guessing most game objects are just going to be that from now on. It's probably what they have set up, and it's cheap to produce. So that's interesting, descoring, and I'll kind of talk about some of the other descoring stuff now too. Expansion limits, you could just, if there's really loose ones, you could just poke a thing down and descore the entire thing in one go. You could also put a blocker at the end where you sit there and the other team can't push stuff out the end. Another funny thing is Pyro Air Blast is back. You could put a giant air tank at one end, push out, and all the balls go flying out the side from your air blast. I want to see someone do that, assuming it's legal. Even if it's not legal, it'd still be funny to see someone do.
A different way.
So there's that.
And I know you guys heard that whenever they saw the 88 blocks we've got on this field. Yeah, so you don't actually see 88 blocks on the field as we've shown here, and that's because we've added a really cool new style of field element to the field this year. We have loaders situated on all four corners of the field. So instead of drivers and drive teams...
So yeah, like I said, there's match loading through loaders, kind of like in Spin Up. So you just basically played it in. It shouldn't be like over under match loading was very skill based. You had to like be quick about putting them in. Here, basically, you just have a funnel that you drop them in, and there's not really any more strategy to that, I don't think. It's just do it reasonably fast. Although robots could probably be built, especially with no expansion limits, to basically just suck them up as you drop them in. Kind of like if you look at some videos from Change Up about robots cycling. I think you could definitely see stuff like that.
Match loading directly onto field tires or onto field tiles or directly into robots. Drivers are match loading into these loaders this year, and robots treat these as a dispenser, so robots will come and take a game piece. These are pre-populated at the beginning of the match.
Which also is interesting is this would be the blue feeder because it has blue balls at the bottom, which means you still need to get these 3 red balls out if you want more blue balls to enter in. So I'm sure there will be some strategic depth there. If you're grabbing these things out, you just leave them loose on the field for the other team to go score, or maybe you try and hoard them somewhere inside your robot.
And drive teams are allowed to keep populating them over the course of the match. Incredible. And so the park zone, the end game, it looks relatively simple. But I think it's going to make for a lot of tense last-second decisions where I expect teams are going to be fighting for control of these goals up to the last possible moment. And at that last second, I imagine these teams are going to rush together to try.
I do not think they will. Like I said before, it's a 20-point swing for pushing a ball out of the middle. One ball could be 20 points. Whereas parking is just going to be 8. So I don't really think this will happen very much where teams rush to the end. I think it'll either be like, oh, we're already losing the match. We might as well go hang for some extra. Or maybe not losing the match, but we lost control over this goal. Like maybe you don't have the goal control, but maybe you won the autonomous bonus or something. Maybe you just overall have more balls scored. And this could be a way to potentially recover and win the match. But I don't think you'll be winning and you will leave to go and do this to try and do that last second park, just because that very much leaves you open and exposed to the other team to go and then push you out.
They get that big 30-point bonus by double parking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that conflicting incentive we've created with the no possession limit, allowing you to control as many blocks as you want, expand. You'll find out about all the expansion rules, robot rules, all the rules on Sunday when we release our game manual then. And there's some fun details in there, I promise you. But there is a conflicting incentive between the...
Now this part is really, really interesting. It's the relation between possession and expansion.
Incentive between the unlimited possession and the expansion that we're allowing to get that unlimited expansion.
So what he just said there is, let me just play that back again, because it's music to my ears.
Expansion.
Unlimited expansion.
To get that unlimited expansion.
So there are reasons in this game where you can have unlimited expansion, which sounds crazy good. You can cap off all of the goals if you're winning. You can block the other team's match load zones. But it's the trade-off between possession and unlimited expansion is what he said.
Fun details in there, I promise you. But there is a conflicting incentive between the unlimited possession and the expansion that we're allowing to get that unlimited expansion.
So I'm guessing the more balls that you control limits your expansion. It's probably not something variable because that would be too hard to ref. It's probably something like if you have less than 3 balls in your possession, you can unlimited expand. If you have more, you can't. So just to try and have, maybe there's robots that are built around hoarding balls, but they don't expand really big. And then maybe there are robots that expand a bunch and they don't really try and hoard balls. And I'm sure that the possession rules, like maybe if you're just blocking balls from exiting the pipes, maybe that counts as possessing the balls. So you can't just like block off all 8 ends to the pipe, NorCal Wallbot style from Tower Takeover. But again, I think that's really interesting. There's finally an unlimited expansion game. It's just going to be variable on the possession, which could be potentially hard to ref if the expansion rules are changing, but we'll see how that goes.
But also shrinking your robot back down to fit both robots in the endgame.
Again, I already said that I don't think endgame is worth it points-wise, and if you're going to be shrinking your robot down from expanding, I think that adds an extra engineering complexity to it that goes on top of the disincentivized strategy.
What do you think about this game?
I think this game is going to blow people's minds. It might look somewhat simple to begin with, but when they start loading these blocks in these long goals and then they come out the other side, it's going to be a whole new realm. VEX Nation!
So that's kind of the game. Curious to see how it kind of plays out. Strategy-wise, I don't love it off the top, because it feels like the entire score, you could be winning, and then someone could just do one big swoop and you lose. It kind of reminds me of Change-Up in that aspect, which I did not love Change-Up. Most people did not love Change-Up. I think it is better than Change-Up still. There's more to it. There's more ways to score. Because there's 3 different heights for goals. You have parking as an option. You have to grab out of the match load. You have to grab out of the open field. You have to push things out. I think it'll be a decent game. I'm going to reserve a lot of my judgment until I see the game manual, though. This game could be really good or really bad. If they make the rules stupid, obviously the game could be bad. There could be a bunch of instant DQs. The game could suck. But it could also be pretty good, especially if the rules are smart. If there's ways to make stop Auton from you interfering with each other as much, I think that would be good. If the elements are sturdy, I think it'll be a decent game. I don't think it'll be anything too stellar, but I think it could be a lot of fun. And I'm curious to see how it plays out. The first is they announced the location for VEX Worlds next year, which is in St. Louis. You can see right here, located in France. Near the Switzerland-Germany border. Lovely little town. So Worlds is in France next year. It is definitely not at Missouri by Illinois. It's definitely not in that St. Louis. It's definitely in the one in France. So I like this location because I go to school there, and that's a 4-hour drive for me, and not down there. St. Louis is pretty central. It's got a nice big airport. There's a lot of teams in that area right there, the Ohio River Valley, that I think are going to quite like that. So I don't know. I'm excited for St. Louis. The thing about St. Louis is currently the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center down here in Texas is, I believe, around 1 million square feet. And the St. Louis one is about, the America Center or whatever it's called, is around 500,000. It's around half the size, I think. So Worlds will almost certainly be smaller next year. So you're going to want to get good because there's probably not going to be many quals. And I think it'll be comparable in size to what we had over in Louisville, which was around like 600 teams for high school. So I would say Worlds is probably going to be a lot harder to qualify for this year. They might have the... There's been talk of potentially moving to a super regional system where after your event region championship, usually your state championship, you play up to like a super regional where you have maybe like 3 or 4 regions combined, and then those teams move on to Worlds. I don't think they'll do that. But again, there's a lot less teams going to Worlds probably unless they make Worlds significantly longer. So there's just kind of that. And I think that pretty much wraps it up for Worlds. Now the next thing is signature event locations. Most of the signature events from last year are back. We have Mall of America at the beginning of the summer. We have Highlander over there. We have a signature event in Nebraska, in Ashland, which is right there. I've been to that venue. It's a cool venue. It's at a space museum, and they have a bunch of really cool stuff. I had a VEX U tournament last year there. So be there. I'll probably be volunteering in some form at that. We have some other ones. Your typical ones like Kalahari, Speedway, Haunted, Sugar Rush, those are all back. One thing that is interesting is Mecha Mayhem up in Calgary is not back, which the primary 2 reasons for that were, 1, they didn't have enough RECF branding there, and 2, they did not like the younger drinking laws in Alberta, specifically that students could actually be old enough to drink, and that was one of the reasons they didn't approve them for a signature event. But Calgary is still happening, so I think they're planning to put on a really good event there, so definitely still consider that, even though it doesn't officially have the signature event label. We also have like the One World Showcase down in California. Some of the other events, there's some international signature events as well. and then some down in Florida as well, although those got canceled last year, and then a bunch in Texas as per usual. So that kind of wraps it up for most of the things this year. Do let me know your thoughts down below on pushback. Don't start building your robot or your notebook until you see the game manual. It's fun, it's cool, but just wait until you see the game manual before you make any too major decisions. I think that's all. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe in order to please the YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you on Sunday, in which I upload a video breaking down the game manual.